In 1893, Chicago built an entire city in 4 months. Within a year, almost all of it was gone. The world's Columbian Exposition wasn't just a fair. It was a functioning metropolis, 27 million square feet of buildings, electric lights that stunned visitors who'd never seen them, a working lagoon system, hotels, restaurants, theaters. Think of it like building Las Vegas in your backyard, then dismantling it before winter. The economic question isn't whether it was impressive, it's why nobody kept it. First, let's understand what a World's Fair actually cost. These weren't small events. Cities spent millions, and remember, this was when a dollar was worth roughly 30 times what it is today. Chicago's 1893 fair cost about $400 million in today's money. That's not a typo for a temporary structure. So the real question becomes, once the fair ended, who was supposed to maintain it? The answer was nobody. The fair's organizers had a problem that looked simple on paper but was actually impossible to solve. The buildings were never meant to last. They were built fast and cheap, plaster, staff, and wood painted white to look like marble. It's like building a display house out of cardboard, impressive for a day, a liability by month 2. But here's where economics gets darker. Even if the buildings had been solid marble, Chicago still couldn't afford to keep them. A World's Fair is built on borrowed time and borrowed money. Cities issue bonds, private investors fund pavilions expecting a return, and when the fair ends, that revenue stops immediately. It's like a restaurant that can only serve during 1 week of the year. The overhead doesn't shrink just because customers left. So the fair closes. Suddenly you've got 27 million square feet of buildings that need security, maintenance, insurance, and utilities, but zero income. Demolition costs money too, but less than keeping the lights on for a decade. Most fair cities made the same choice: tear it down, sell the salvage, and move on. That's what happened in Chicago. Within 3 years, almost nothing remained. But wait, some fairs did leave things standing. St. Louis in 1904 kept some buildings. San Francisco's 1915 fair left behind the Palace of Fine Arts. Why? Because in those cases, cities found tenants. A museum needs a building. A university might want a library. If you can convert temporary into permanent and find someone to pay for it, the economics flip. The real cost of a World's Fair wasn't the initial construction. It was the decision afterward. Keep it, and you're locked into decades of maintenance for a property that's already outdated. The buildings were designed to impress for one moment, not to function for 50 years. Tear it down, and you've wasted the original investment, but stopped the bleeding. This happened over and over. Paris, Brussels, New York, the pattern was identical. Build something spectacular, watch millions arrive over a few months, collect admission fees and vendor rents, then face the math. One fair organizer in the 1930s put it plainly: we're not building a city, we're building an advertisement. Once the ad campaign ends, you don't keep the billboard up forever. There's also a psychological factor that economists don't always discuss. A World's Fair represents a moment, a specific year, a specific vision. By the time it closes, that moment has passed. The technology that seemed revolutionary is already aging. The architectural style that impressed visitors looks dated within 5 years. Keeping it is like keeping a newspaper from 1893 displayed in your living room. Historically interesting, but not useful. The economic lesson is this: temporary structures stay temporary because they're designed to be. The cost of converting them into permanent ones, structural upgrades, modern code compliance, ongoing maintenance, often exceeds the cost of demolition. A fair building can't be retrofitted into a modern office. It wasn't built for that. But there's a second factor: land value. When a fair ended, cities faced a choice about what to do with the empty space. Sell the land to developers, keep it as a park, build something new. In Chicago, the fair's location eventually became part of the city's museum campus. In other cities, the land got carved up and sold off piecemeal. The fair disappeared, but the real estate didn't. So why did World's Fair cities vanish? Not because they were poorly built, though many were. Not because cities didn't care about preservation, though some didn't. They vanished because the economics made sense. The original investment was sunk. The operating costs were unsustainable. The buildings were purpose-built for one event. Demolition was the rational choice. There's a modern echo here. Today, cities still build temporary structures for events, Olympic venues, World Cups, expos. The same problem persists. Rio built a stadium for the Olympics. Now it's crumbling, too expensive to maintain, too specialized to repurpose. The economics of build for one event, deal with it later hasn't changed in 130 years. The difference now is that we have a century of history to learn from. Some cities are building with reuse in mind. Temporary structures that can actually be converted, venues that become museums, community centers, or housing. It's not revolutionary. It's just applying the lesson that World's Fair cities learned the hard way. Don't build something you can't afford to keep. The World's Fairs weren't failures. They were exactly what they were designed to be: temporary celebrations of human achievement. The mistake was pretending they could be anything else. Once the fair ended, the economics were clear. Demolition made sense. Preservation would have been irrational. The cities didn't disappear because people forgot them. They disappeared because keeping them would have cost more than they were worth. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research. If you want to understand the economic forces that shape our cities, from why neighborhoods change to how development actually works, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive into the hidden economics of our cities. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research.